It is May the 1st, 2021, and you're watching The Future of Photography.
The Future of Photography.
Yeah, you're watching and you're listening to, I guess. I don't really know I think more people are listening, I would think. I'm Chris, there's Imar, there's Adrian, there's Jeremiah. Good, whatever part of the day.
Ciao bella.
Ciao bella, yeah. But you have to do it with the fingers, like this.
There are a lot of finger gestures in this country that are too rude for that. I might get it wrong.
You gotta use the right one. Here we go again with another episode about, well, the future of photography. I guess it has a part of a history lesson in it, but of course there are implications. We're talking about light today. And Adrian, you have brought us a few morsels of history into our pad that we're working off. So why don't you kick this off?
Well, thank you indeed. I like to think this is applied history, right? So there's something for us all to learn. I've got a little story to tell. There's something for us all to learn, and hopefully that can then be applied to our photography. I think that's where we're going here today. So first of all, it is a story about some famous people, and they're famous for things not necessarily to do with photography. So although the first name probably not so many will intuitively jump to. So first off, has anybody heard of William Thompson?
Nope.
In the context of photography, not really.
Okay, all right. Well, here we go. So William Thompson was born in Belfast in 1824. So what's that? It's nearly 200 years ago at this point. Having been born in Belfast, though, he lived most of his life in Glasgow, and he had a really very successful scientific academic career, and he also was a reasonably successful businessman and made plenty of money on the side and lived in a nice house and what have you. If you go to Glasgow today, there's a certain area in Glasgow, and I can't remember what it's called, but
Kelvin Grove?
Could be. There's a park named after him and stuff like that. You've just jumped ahead there, Emma, because you've used the name. Right? So let's deal with that, right? So people might know him actually more by his official title. He was the first Baron Kelvin. Otherwise known as Lord Kelvin. And he is the person who the temperature scale is named after. So he didn't invent it, but he did a chunk of work around it. And it was named after him at the end.
Wikipedia calls him the Right Honourable the Lord Kelvin.
Yes. Well, as is the case in this country, even today, people can carry many titles. Sometimes it's you can collect them as you go. It's kind of like, I don't know, Pokemon or something. Collect them all.
And sometimes those titles are not as polite as the right.
Well, indeed. Okay, so William Thompson, the first Baron Kelvin, Lord Kelvin, he had a fantastically successful career. He ended up his career, he worked for, till he was at least 75 or something like that. And he ended up as Chancellor or Chairman or something of the leader, the boss of the University of Glasgow, amongst other things. The first photographic name that comes into this story, I'm hoping everybody will know. In about 1899, a chap by the name of George Eastman recruited William Thompson. So hopefully everybody's heard of George Eastman. If not, Chris has got some videos of his house you can watch on YouTube.
It's true.
So George Eastman actually recruited Kelvin to serve as vice chairman of the board, I think, of the British arm of Kodak Limited, which of course is heavily connected with Eastman Kodak in the United States. This bit got me wondering. It was going to be a bit of a rabbit hole, so I haven't done all the research. This bit got me wondering about whether Kodak Limited, perhaps better known now as Alaris, was the start of the company that now actually actually owns all of the Kodak manufacturing of film, but not entirely sure about that. But there's definitely something for listeners who like to get down to the bottom of the rabbit holes to go into there. Okay, so the name Kelvin, by the way, it's got nothing to do with temperature. William Thompson had a laboratory at the university, and a river ran past it, and it was called the River Kelvin. And so when he received his honorary peerage, he was named Lord Kelvin. So actually, the Kelvin scale is about water. It's got nothing to do with temperature at all.
At least it wasn't his pet rabbit.
Yes, yeah. Okay, moving on. And a story. Next chapter in our story. Now we start to involve another famous scientist. This time, hopefully, a household name. And Chris, one of your compatriots, a chap by the name of Max Planck.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know. Do they in German schools teach much about Max Planck and scientists? I know sometimes in British schools we learn about the successes of British scientists, but I guess sometimes we're a little bit colloquial here.
He comes up in context when like quantum theory and these kind of things are mentioned. And of course, there's the Max Planck Society with different locations spread all over Germany, and one was in Tübingen, where I used to live. So you always kind of knew someone who worked there. But yeah, that's kind of my involvement with Max Planck.
Ah, I see. Okay. Well, did you all know that in the early 1890s, Max Planck was asked to figure out the optimal temperature of a light bulb, such that it would be the most efficient, where efficient in this case means the maximum amount of light output for an input of electrical power.
Ah, that's cool.
Everybody's now looking at me going, okay.
Okay. That should be easy to figure out.
Well, apparently not. Which is why there's a video on this in the show notes, because apparently in order to figure out the answer to this relatively straightforward question, Max Planck had to invent quantum mechanics. I'm exaggerating a little bit there for the storytelling effect. He may not quite have invented quantum mechanics, but he certainly did some very important groundwork that was then built upon by others. It's the old story, isn't it, in the world of science? If I've seen further than others, it's because I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. So certainly Max Planck had a big role to play here. It turns out that the answer to that question about the temperature of a light bulb was really, really difficult to answer because, it's a lot of us would understand quite intuitively, I think, that the more energy you put into something, the hotter it gets. But of course, it gives most things give off heat and then electromagnetic radiation in a vast spectrum rather than a single point. So it became a very difficult thing to answer. And what Planck discovered in his research was that actually, light travels in packets. Called quanta, and this was brand new science, right? Absolutely brand new science. The practical implications of it for us as photographers and filmmakers, the hotter a body is, the higher the frequency of the light given off. And high frequency invisible light tends towards the blue end of the spectrum, the ultraviolet, whereas lower frequencies tend towards the infrared end of the visible light spectrum. Okay, so in other words, the hotter something is, the more blue it gets. Now, that's incredibly counterintuitive to me because, ice is cold, right? Ice is cold, right? And it's blue. And fire is hot and it's red, right? So surely hotter things are redder, not bluer, which is why I always turn the white balance dial the wrong way on my camera.
Yeah.
But it turns out the science behind it is that there's a whole bunch of stuff beyond fire that is really hot, like the sun and stuff like that. Which actually do burn bluer, and so actually the hotter you go, the bluer the light given off by a body. It doesn't have to be on fire, by the way. It can just be the heat inside a body of matter, and it will get hot enough. When it gets hot enough, it'll glow. We talk about things being red hot or white hot. Beyond that, you get to blue hot. Anyway, that's what confuses.
And how does that work in black holes, where light can not escape?
I don't know.
You're asking the right questions. I was just thinking about that.
Yes.
Exactly, triggered that.
I'm going to give you the photographer's answer. There's a clue in the name. They don't call them black holes for nothing. Beyond that, I have absolutely no idea what the answer to your question is, I'm afraid. Okay, so let's have a little break, right? Is everybody following the story so far, right? Hotter things are blue, colder things are red.
Yes.
Take your word for it. Yeah.
Don't take my word for it.
Colder, hot
theory.
things.
Well,
are red.
you can.
Colder, cold things are blue. Colder, hot things are red.
Well,
Really hot things are blue.
How does that relate to LEDs?
Oh, well, we'll come on to that in a minute, actually. That's a very, very good question.
I think it's fairly logical. If you make a piece of steel glow and you make it glow much hotter, it gets white.
It turns white. Yeah.
Right, so it's white hot.
Yeah.
And that gets towards the blue side of the spectrum, while it being colder in relation to that white hot, it gets redder. So it kind of makes sense.
If you look at a candle flame, you can see all that, can't you?
It has the hotter parts
as
and
you
the
get
colder parts, yes.
Yeah, because you get.
And
the
as you get
blue
closer
right
to
in
the
middle.
sun,
Yeah.
what happens then?
Your wings
Okay,
melt.
Are you getting hotter? brighter,
can
or
anybody that hasn't
redder?
read the show notes further down have a guess about what the answer to the question is? Remember, Max Planck was asked a question: what is the optimal temperature for a light bulb? Anybody?
3,200?
Was that a guess, or did you read the show notes?
No, I did not read the show notes. It's a good guess.
It's a guess. If it's a guess, genuinely a really, really good guess, because it's absolutely spot on. And so what we now think of in terms of tungsten white balance or 3,200 Kelvin, that all comes about because in the early days of electric lighting, it was calculated that was the most efficient temperature to give off the most light for a given input of electrical power. There we go. What a great story, eh?
Well,
Check, please.
Those guys were just amazing, weren't they? I mean, crazy and amazing in crazy way, in the best kind of crazy, like Max Planck and all those guys that Tesla
sidebar
and
question.
just mad.
Sidebar question. Why were the Scots so great at these kinds of engineering in their culture?
Have you been to Scotland? There's a lot of environmental things to battle in Scotland. No, it's a really good question. I don't know.
It was just a really big. It was very important in science in general. I think it was that kind of University of Edinburgh and all like the medical school there, and like all the experimentation they were doing with bodies, and it just seemed to be like a hub for, I guess, all those people who were attracted like moths to a flame.
And I think it's a lot of it is to do with money as well. So you have to remember at this point in time, Glasgow was an incredibly important trading city, and money flocked to it. So it was a centre for engineering, and it was a centre for business, and it was a centre for learning and science and experimentation. That is, I think, part of. We have several cities like that in the UK, actually more than several, where they had at various different times in the last 300, 400, 500 years, they've been the centre for something new, and has attracted brain power and economic power and things like that. I mean, I guess I mean, I guess there may well be equivalents in Ireland and in Germany, and I think 'cause a lot of this happened before the mass population of the United States. But I think you still see it in the east coast of the United States as well, very much, don't you?
Well, yeah, I think more in the West Coast hubs of Stanford, Silicon Valley. You have a tremendous amount of attraction of money, science, education, all kind of roiling around that created the Googles and Apples, et cetera, that have kind of spread across the world. I think we're going to see that in China soon, and artistically in Mexico City or Paris, there was that for different reasons.
Yeah, I can't remember where Stanford was from, but I know the Berkeley family of the famous Berkeley University. They're
Sure.
English.
I'd never know.
So there is a well, I think not very famous, but an old British family called the Berkeley family. They have a castle called Berkeley Castle in the West Country, and they are the family behind Berkeley Square, as in a nightingale sang in Berkeley Square, the very famous, very nice place to be in London. There's actually a Berkeley Square in Bristol as well, which is closer to their family home. It's not quite as grand as the one in London, but again, all of this comes, and one of them, I understand, was one of the founders of Berkeley University. But there you go. That might be entirely an urban myth, but there you go. Okay, right, on with the story then. Well, actually, probably the story bit is over, because, of course, the question to ask now is, what does all of this mean? Why are we telling this story today? What does all of this mean for us as photographers and filmmakers? And there's another link in the show notes to another short video, this time on a YouTube channel called FilmmakerIQ, which is a fantastic channel. If anybody doesn't know of it, please do go watch it.
Absolute recommendation. On that one.
Yeah, he's really good. Yeah,
he is very good. He's very good. This particular video is about 7 or 8 years old as we record this. So some of the technology he mentions, especially around LED light, the technology has moved on, a chunk. It's not far off, because he's talking in terms of theory and challenges and things like that, but it is there is some technological maturity that wasn't there when this was last made. This video, was made. But it's the video talks about a little bit about the history stuff, but it talks about what this means in practical terms for us. It talks about what it means in artistic terms for us as well. And it's a channel that focuses on filmmaking rather than photography. So the people he quotes are people like famous cinematographer Roger Deakins, for example. And the example there was the cool color temperatures that Deakins used in the film Fargo, the Coen brothers movie Fargo.
Sure.
Just one example from that.
Well, Christopher Doyle, In the Mood for Love, is a great example of the use of color and blending colors to evoke mode.
Hurt Locker was a good one as well for that. Very much the Hurt Locker was great for color.
Yeah. Storaro, who I've had the pleasure of knowing, could spend hours and hours and hours discussing the quality of light and color and how it evokes emotional responses on every level. It's probably the subject for another show, which is color in photography and how our controls of color can be, as we move forward in technology, how we have more control over mixing and matching colors on a very specific scale, because we can tune our lights to Kelvin that is very specific, and we can blend them and we can adjust them and contrast them. And so it becomes a very interesting subject, spoken by the man who generally works in black and white.
Which is the easy way out when it comes to colors, right?
It's a podcast. We're all winging it, Jeremiah. Don't worry about it.
So the future, of course, it's the past, but it's also the future, because light temperature, color temperature is crucial to anything that
Sure.
we do in our color work. He's there. We have to take it into
It's
account,
true.
and it doesn't matter if we artificially create the light or if we shoot during daylight, because even the daylight changes over the entire day. It's always different.
And by the way, I'm only being facetious about black and white, because black and white's rendition,
course.
reflection, and interpretation of color is absolutely fundamental in understanding how to get the best black and white.
And every black and white film has a different way of dealing with the different parts of the spectrum. So, yeah.
Certainly does. And in the early days of filmmaking, makeup had to be interpreted in a very, very different way. So you had actresses with effectively almost black lips and blanched faces.
I've seen recreations of old sets where the actors had like green and blue faces, because that would register on the black and white film as you would expect red lips to look and a healthy color to look.
Certainly. Yeah, and let's not forget that while the sun is our kind of great equalizer in terms of Kelvin and overall kind of consistent color, that it is getting less bright every day. And in about 10 billion years, it won't be around at all. So shoot fast.
Possibly the slightly more noticeable impact on the sun's light is the different times of day.
That.
Things like golden hour, for example. Golden hour being a feature of that when the sun is low on the horizon, the sun rays have to come through far more Earth atmosphere to get to you.
Or the gloaming.
They're filtered.
Anybody familiar with that term, the gloaming?
The gloaming. Roman in the gloaming.
Roman in the gloaming. Just before night falls, like.
Yeah.
Gorgeous.
So these things are, little bit of history, little bit of what does it all mean for us? Well, first of all, I know we say this every week, but I really would encourage people to follow the links in the show notes. And if you're not so much interested in the history, please look at the FilmmakerIQ one, because it deals with some really practical stuff. Things like why are fluorescent lights green? What are the difference between some lights that really only emit in part of the visible spectrum, different from those that emit light across a broad range of the visible spectrum? Why are kino flows so expensive?
and why don't we really use them so much anymore because of LEDs, right?
Yeah, all of that. I mean, there's a lot of really good practical stuff in that FilmmakerIQ video. And it's, for me, because I'm really interested in this is the bit of photography that I geek out on most. I think color and light. I'm less. In fact, I probably couldn't accurately tell you how many pixels my cameras have. Sufficient.
Exactly.
Which, by the way, slight aside, I believe that's what it says in the Rolls-Royce brochure, but when in the section on engine power. I believe that it's quite a legendary thing that Rolls-Royce, they just say, our cars have sufficient power.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you think that color, and this is for all three of you, in an image is distracting or fundamental in terms of its delivery of subject and emotion?
I would say fundamental. Yeah. Because you can change the mood of an image dependent on
I think it's
what way you choose to color it. From my own point of view, dramatically change it. Like,
I think the mood really is linked to color, but not just because I probably know as many photos that I find emotionally touching that are in color as there are in black and white. So it's a different language. Color is a different language than black and white. Contrasts versus colors, even though the black and white part is always present in the color part, while the color part is not present in a black and white photo. So there's a very close link, and I have the feeling that you can tell the same stories in black and white that you can tell with color, and vice versa. I think it's just a different tool, and you need to learn to use the tools.
Yeah. So it's the light really more than the color, isn't it?
I would say that how it all works in combination is what really drives it. I mean, I find that if I went on the street randomly in a very busy visual environment and took a snap, and then I did the exact same shot in black and white and just compared them, I would be a lot less interested in the color image because it would just be a cacophony and a blend and a kind of a melange of colors that meant nothing. And yet in black and white, I could reduce it to its abstract contrast, reflectivity, and form, which would have same image, more impact. On the other hand, there was a wonderful movie called Judo, Chinese film, maybe in I'm thinking the late 80s, early 90s. But the sense of color, it all was set in a dye factory or fabric dyeing factory, and the color of red and just the use of color would not have been the same film in black and white because color was there as a character in the film. Again, I referred to In the Mood for Love or many of Chris Doyle's film Hero, all of those. Color is a character as much as anything else. The same way in Mank, latest film out this year, black and white really is a great signifier for the history of film and the form and the kind of classic simplicity of shape and form in storytelling. So I think what we're all saying is learning both is really important, and understanding what works best in terms of one's intention certainly is important.
Certainly that's part of what I was hoping to get out of this conversation, Jeremiah, because we hear so much about the decisive moment. And we see so many YouTube videos about street photography. I'm out on the street shooting this photo and that photo, and then sometimes I think, do you know what, that's quite a one-dimensional look at it. It's not a bad dimension, but sometimes it can be quite one-dimensional. And what happens if you blend that? What happens if you get somewhere closer to the colour street work of Saul Leiter, for example? Or what happens if you go to the far point of this equation and you end up taking photographs that are just because of the colour, and Eggleston springs to mind at that point, and then there are so many different things. And then light. Let's pick one out of the blue. Fan Ho. Fan Ho, photos of Hong Kong in, is it the 50s, the 1950s mostly, maybe, which are black and white, but are all
mind-blowing work,
yeah.
Yes.
And you almost think, it's almost like you've got, a three-pointed, let's say it's as a triangle, and one of the points of the triangle is color, and another point of the triangle is light, and another point of the triangle is something to do with composition or something.
Form.
Form. Okay, yeah, even better. Thank you. And where do you sit, or what do you try to achieve? Are you trying to achieve something around that pushes more into color, or is color less important and actually form is more important? We have all of these rules that are thrown at us, like leading lines and the rule of thirds and things like that. Sometimes it helps just see the bigger picture. And for me, this stuff that we've been talking about today about color temperature and color itself, for me, it's all part of the big context. And as often as not, it's a color that catches my eye, or it's a combination of color and light, and you think, oh yeah, I wonder if I could capture that in any way that makes sense as how I've seen it in my brain. So.
I think when you lift the camera or to your eye and look through the viewfinder, or hold your phone up and something catches your eye and you're framing it, there is an immediate instinct of what drew you to that moment. You may have taken a picture quickly, but then you may settle down and want to do that extra shot where maybe you adjust the horizon line a little more carefully, where you balance the compositional load a little more carefully. But I know this is for me. I'm always asking myself, what draws me to this? Am I seeing this in black and white, or am I seeing this in color? Sometimes it's given. In other words, I'm looking for black and white, gray, low contrast, high contrast, busy, not busy, whatever my intentions. But sometimes I'm just walking randomly, and I'll go, "Oh, look at that! I want to take a picture of it," and then I'll snap it, and then do another one, where my conscious mind is going. The color itself is provoking my response, and then I will have a different interpretation. I may adjust it either in post or in my presence as I photograph it. And I think those explorations are always interesting. That second beat of conscious snap as opposed to the instinct snap, and comparing those are often a very interesting way of self-discovery.
That's
Do you know what I often find? The first one is the best. Do you ever find that?
Yes, yes.
No.
For me, yes. For me, yes.
And I'm like, damn, the first one was the best. Why didn't I just stop then?
I did this during our little exercise for this episode. We set ourselves a little exercise to not necessarily strictly related to light, even though it's photography, but we talked about pinhole photography and gave ourselves a little task to bring home pinhole photos. And I've taken let's just move on to that now. I've taken my digital camera and put a pinhole cap on it, pretty much. And I found when coming back home and reviewing the photos that it was most of the time the first one that worked out best, interestingly enough. I often work myself towards a photo, but in this case, it was more than not the earlier ones in a
I could agree with that, because shooting pinhole, there's so much up in the air.
Yeah.
Photograph. You're anticipating
That's what I discovered.
something, and I think it's the surprise of it and that instinct that is also part of the flow. But I think that, under different circumstances, when I went and made my first television commercial, this is me as a photographer was hired to do a TV commercial. And it was literally the first time I was ever on a set, never mind film set. And it was my set. And so I would go to adjust the light, and all the union guys go, "No, you don't have to do that. We do that." And I went, "Oh, I could get used to that." Change that light, lower that. I just sit in my chair and bark orders. I loved it. But when I was shooting, there was a moment where a woman had to hold a glass up to the, she took a drink of wine glass, and I wanted to just hit that little bing on the edge of the glass. And so I did it, and it looked pretty good. And then I did it again and adjusted, 50 takes.
Yeah.
Now I'm in the editing room. It was a wonderful editor that I worked with, Ron Vester, who really taught me a great deal about working in film. We were cutting it on a flatbed, and we were running the takes, and it was like, okay, there's take one. That's pretty good. Take two. That's pretty good. The difference, like between take one and take 50, was like in the context of a cut. It was just like a moment.
Yeah.
And so I learned very quickly that there's a very different preciousness about a still image that is highly controlled by the image maker, and a transitional image which uses more Eisensteinian context to affect the delivery of the intention. So
I get that even in my own stuff with the family, even just something really basic like taking photographs of the family or taking video of the family. It's a very different thing, because you want that element of control, or you want to capture a decisive moment, dare I say it, in a photograph. But with a video, it's like, well, you get 30 decisive moments a second, so.
Well, often as a joke on set, when we have to do a lot of takes for, what could be a mechanical reason or performance issue, whatever, I'll often go, okay, print 1 and 80. Always gets a good response from from the camera department.
All right.
Okay,
Do
well,
you
there we
want
go.
to look at photos?
Go. Yeah.
Do you want to
Yeah.
look at pictures? Okay, let me bring up the...
I have to confess, though, I didn't do any of the pinhole stuff, I'm afraid. So.
That is fine. That is fine.
You did
So I'm bringing up our TFOP photo library. You can find those at tfttf.com/tfop photos. That is, of course, also linked in the show notes if you're not watching this, but you want to see the photos later. So we start with,
No, next to
not
it.
that one.
That's this one. Yeah,
This one is your pinhole contribution.
yeah, yeah.
Is
That
it
was
is it
shot
an
on
actual
Leica.
pinhole?
It's an actual pinhole. I
Right.
show it by Leica and the pinhole cap on it.
You're just showing
and,
off those palm trees in Los Angeles, right?
I don't have to show them off. They frame me.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah, it's lovely.
The silhouette nature
It's
of
my
it.
daily walk. Yeah.
Nice
Sure.
walk.
And by the way, I took it into Photoshop, and I tried. This is not the result of that, but I took it into Photoshop and tried to apply a neural filter to it. Forget it.
You tried.
Really?
It got so confused about what it was seeing and what
Wow.
colors, and it could not nail it, which was interesting.
And you only
Good in
submitted...
a way.
Sorry? Go ahead.
It was good. That was good in a way.
Yeah. Yeah,
I would say.
this is the thing. These filters can only make sense of things that they've seen before. Otherwise, they will be slightly confused, I guess. I have submitted 4 because I can, and it was on a walk that I did this week, and I was just looking for things that are that showcase what Pinhole will do. Which that's actually not a showcase picture. That's just the Autobahn, because Autobahn. And that does showcase a bit that you typically end up with very tiny amounts of light through a very tiny hole, so you end up with longer exposures. So that's one of the reasons there. But what I really like about Pinhole is the fact that it's the same sharpness or the same unsharpness throughout the entire depth of the picture. So whatever's close, whatever's far away, you will have the exact same level of sharpness, and that lends itself to taking shots with things that are very close and very far in the same photo, where you'd normally have to find ways to make this work with a traditional lens, with a glass lens. But in
No
this case,
focus stacking needed.
no focusing needed. Even though the pinhole is in relation to the sensor I'm shooting on is fairly big, so you get a strong level of unsharpness in this one. But yeah, this close far thing I played with a little flower, and that was the same thing, very close and further away, and it's all in the same level of focus, and then a little road construction, and the exact same thing.
I like those.
I wonder if there's AI that you could just paint and it'll reconstruct what it thinks is the focus.
That's
far back.
likely possible. There's lots of AIs today that will do that. But why should I? I want that aesthetic.
Yeah, I like that.
No.
But imagine you could magically restore whatever is in there in the
Just with a
original.
brush.
You wouldn't need any lenses anymore. You'd just have pinhole caps for all cameras from now on.
Or LiDAR.
Yes. So Imar, you did a different approach.
Okay, well, I did 2 things because I don't have an actual pinhole camera, or I didn't make one. So what I did was I used this app that's called Pinhole. It was very difficult to find pinhole apps. This one is really basic controls. I quite liked it. It's color by default, so this was probably the first time I tried it out, and sleepy cat on the floor, and I like what it does to the colors in color. I have no idea how it rates against the real thing.
It
It's
seems
very different. I have it. What is interesting is you open the shutter
Yeah.
and it could take an extremely long
Yeah.
exposure. While you're taking the exposure, you can do a snapshot of each step.
Okay. Okay.
And
I
when it's
didn't
very
opt for
dark,
that, but it's very dark. Yeah.
and when it's dark, you could boost the after and post, edit it to bring it out, and edit the colors.
I was
and it's
tempted
quite
to.
magic.
I was tempted to edit it, but I didn't want to because I felt it might be cheating. But look at that blue.
it's
lovely.
it's intense, and what I think it also does is to help simulate a pinhole look. It also seems to add a pretty strong vignette around the sides. So, which is very typical. If you use a pinhole with a very short distance between the hole and the sensor or the film, then
Yeah.
you end up with a super wide angle, but also very strong vignetting, and that might be.
Yeah, this literally,
the mitigation for that is to have a pinhole camera that has a curved film plane.
Okay.
Yes.
Because then your film is equidistant from your pinhole.
That's
think
your
someone has one of
your
those.
soda can, right? Right.
Yeah, there's that. Well, and my pinhole is my pinhole camera, which I didn't use this week, so what I should have done clearly, has a curved, almost semicircular film plane, for exactly that reason,
Yep.
to cut down on the vignetting.
Right. So, Imar, you submitted a second one.
Yeah, the other thing I tried out was the Hipstamatic, the Hipstapack, the pinhole one. So this was out in my garden, and I'm not sure if that's. It looks like.
It says pinhole on the tin, but not on the picture. I guess.
Like use it, but I do love that explosion of.
Yeah. It's almost
I
like
think it
as if
works.
you zoomed while shooting.
Yeah, or pull the focus or something. I don't know. Yeah. So.
And then last but not
same.
least,
That's the Hipstamatic one again.
It's lovely. Yeah.
I like the glow around the
looking-
edges.
it's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was happy with that. But again, I don't know if it represents pinhole. My favorite one is the river one, which is next. I reposted it there just so it would be next to.
I mean,
the
it
others.
could. This one.
Yeah. Now it was handheld as well, so there was that. But in that pinhole app, you sort of see it expose on the screen. So it begins really black, and then as the seconds mount up, you actually see the image develop in front of you on the
right.
screen, which is
Interesting.
kind of interesting, yeah. But definitely put it on a tripod.
A lot
do
of
what I
Olympus
did.
cameras have that actually as a you could watch the landscape. or
Yeah,
the sort of
I'd
the-
love
you
to.
watch the
Actually, I didn't get to try it this week, but I intend to stick it on a tripod and like leave the shutter open for a much longer time and just play around with that and see what happens. I think you could get some interesting effects. Pinhole app, it was free.
The
think.
thing I love about pinhole in general, if you're working with a real pinhole on your camera, is that you get to decide two things. You get to decide how sharp the image is going to be by selecting the size of the pinhole. So if you have like a 4x5 film and a tiny pinhole, you get almost crisp photos out of it. That's the one thing. And the other thing is you decide to get you get to decide the focal length of it. So you can just by varying the distance between the pinhole and your medium, you decide if it's a wide angle or if it's a telephoto. You could have two sliding boxes that slide inside each other and make a zoom pinhole camera easily, and that's kind of the fun. And the focal length is the distance between the pinhole and the medium. So make that 10 millimeters, and you have a very wide angle, and it's a ton of fun to play with that. So
Brilliant.
yeah, that brings us to our picks of the week.
I forgot. Sorry.
You forgot? Oh no,
I forgot.
That's okay.
Until you said it this minute.
That is perfectly fine. Jeremiah, how about yours first?
I kept us on message about light.
Oops, let me take this
Well
out.
done.
Here we go. What is
It's
it?
very interesting. It's a very interesting company, Anthem, and they are making spectacular small lighting packages made up of you see that box with replaceable LEDs, basically for cinema, that can be snapped together to emulate 10Ks or 1K. But if for those who are interested in sort of the next gen, each of these that you're going through has a different color. And very, very quickly to snap in and out for the crew. You do not need to have a generator on set. And they are not crazy expensive.
So let me make sure I've understood what these are, Jeremiah. So these are LED lights.
See that this box
LED, and the box is like a studio strobe kind of size, right? So they're big. When I first looked at it, I thought, oh, it's another Lume cube, but this is not that.
No, they're
all.
about 2 feet. 2 feet by 8 inches,
and then where we've all kind of gotten used to over the last couple of years the idea of LED. I can't remember what the term is. The single chipset LEDs, where they're all where you just get like a yellow circle or a yellow square in your lighting fixture. What you're saying here is that they've made those interchangeable. So that you can get
these lights are absolutely precise in terms of their wavelength.
So you're swapping out the bulb, so to speak. Just they are LED panels of different sorts.
Yes.
Okay.
They run cool. They plug into regular electricity. They snap together. You could build big arrays. And I was lucky enough to be at a very small group, like 4 or 5 of us, because he is a friend of mine, and to show us these lights for the very first time before they were introduced. And I'm as I'm kind of producing a show now, I'm trying to figure out if we could do the entire series just with this kind of package.
Wow.
So wish me luck.
So let's see, Adrian, what did you bring us?
I brought you an experience, Chris. So my pick of the week today is...
Oh, love it.
Is the Harry Potter Studios just outside London. Now, you can substitute this wherever you are in the world for something similar. The point of this is that we've been talking about lighting today, and there is nothing... Well, there are very few things as inspirational as seeing lighting done well, right? So whether or not you are a Harry Potter fan, I'm very much middle of the road on Harry Potter itself. To visit this place where they have many of the sets, and just to look at it purely from a lighting point of view is just the most awesome thing. They do have in the studios here, they have some bigger sets like Diagon Alley, right? But that has lots of different lighting setups. Some of the best lit ones are the smaller sets. So one in particular that caught my eye last time I was there is Hagrid's Cottage. It's the inside of Hagrid's cottage, and it absolutely blew my mind as a lighting exercise. I think that another one that really got me was the dorm room. The circular room where they all have their beds. That the lighting in there was astonishing. So this is an inspirational thing, right? I'm sure there you don't have to go to Harry Potter World, but find somewhere you can go to, and from a point of view of lighting, and just appreciate what is possible, and let that inspire you.
Let me give a shout out to Roger Pratt, who I've worked with, and he's the cinematographer who lit this. And Stuart Craig, who I've worked with a lot, who's the production designer. 2 of the finest human beings. Second of all, geniuses, both of them in their world. Very meticulous and a joy to be with and work with. And these guys really created that feel. Working together, they had worked together. When I worked with them, we had all worked together. I had hired both of them separately, and the very next thing they did was Harry Potter. So both of them come from that traditional English detailed craft of how to shape light. And there's no light in there. There's no bit of a set that is not thought through. These guys make every decision very carefully.
It is astonishing, and you can't. The other thing is you can't see any of the fixtures, and it's all just hidden away in nooks and crannies. And I know it's very. I mean, I know that's really easy to achieve with a camera angle and what have you, but to achieve that in an exhibit that is designed for people to see from different angles is just quite extraordinary. I find that really just mind blowing. So yeah, find something, go out there and see something done well. That's my tip for this.
Yeah.
All right. And last but not
Actually
least,
saw it right before COVID. I managed to get in there.
lucky you.
That was my last trip anywhere.
It'll all come back. I've brought as a piece of kit, a piece of gear that I've seen with a lot of photographers, and it is by Yongnuo, the YN360, which is a light. Let me see if it fits in the frame. It's a light.
Just about.
Yeah, I tend to call it a lightsaber.
It's like a weapon.
It's like a
It's a
weapon.
light wand.
It's a light wand. That's what it is. So if I turn off my lights here,
Light wand.
and then you can turn this on, and you can just point it at things from different distances and angles and so on. You can switch the color temperature. You can have warm light. This is very bright.
Wow.
You can change the brightness. You can make it warm. You can make it cold, or you can make it.
It's certainly powerful enough to do things that your camera
You can make it
doesn't like.
colorful, right? So you can change it, and you can switch it out for colors and everything. So this is.
Can you do light painting with it? It works.
Of course you can. Of course you can. If you have a dark room and you can use it to make swooshy things in the picture, and I think it's €80, €90 maybe.
They're inexpensive. I have two of them lighting me right now. Slightly different models from the one that you've shown.
It has a tripod thread, so sometimes I use it as a light and just put it on a little light stand or on a tripod of some sorts. And
I need one of those, maybe.
these are fun to play.
I'm gone
This is
dark again.
Super fun to play with. They use standard kind of batteries, so.
Actually, mine have the battery, so I have a different model with the battery is built in, but it does different colours of white. So there's different colour temperatures between about 2,700 and about 6,000. Yes, indeed, yes. So we can get you different Kelvin temperatures off them, as well as the RGB stuff. As a brand, for me personally, working very much in a consumer space, they're a really good trade-off for me between the cost of ownership and what they can actually do, and the quality of the kit and what they can do. So
Right.
I got a flash from them, like a manual flash. So many flashes are just automatic, and they plug into whatever cameras they are designed to plug into, and it's very hard to manipulate.
I got a drawer full of them.
One of these
I got about
very
4.
inexpensively.
Yeah, I got 4 of their speed lights. Just because you can buy 4 of them for the price of anything with a Canon or a Nikon or whatever brand.
Yeah. I was using it with the Fuji 6.9. Just right on.
Yeah, be ideal for that. Yeah,
It's fantastic.
All right. I guess that brings us to the end of the episode. Let's see. We have learned about why Kelvin is called Kelvin. We've learned about the history of that. We've taken a journey from England to Germany to other places around the world.
Black holes.
Black holes, yeah, black holes. We've talked about.
We'll do a show from the black hole next week.
Yeah, that would be cool. That would be totally cool. We don't know what we'll talk about next week, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be exciting because we always find something as usual. So, everyone, we are, of course, online at The Future of Photography. You can find us on social media at TFOP now. Until next time.
Bye.
You've been listening to The Future of Photography. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your other podcasts. Find the show notes and more information at thefutureofphotography.com.